everybody, it's Hummingbird027 here. Today is June 27th, 2012. I am presenting this video from a Stephen who sent the original links to me, which are in the description box below. Very important that we understand the truth and where we are going with our belief structures, who we are actually giving authority to. Is it Satan or is it Yahweh? We need to be very clear in these times because the deception is getting intense, folks. I hope you'll enjoy this video, and thanks again for watching.
You keep mentioning the expression, the supreme rock god of the Kaaba. What do you mean by that?
Well, when Muhammad finally subjugated the Quraysh tribe and ordered the destruction of about 360 gods and goddesses in the year 632 AD, he left only one stone unmolested in the Kaaba. Most Muhammadan Muslims have never been told or are ignorant of the following fact, as recorded in the tradition of the Arabs themselves, that the holiest rock of the Kaaba has always been and still is what they call the black stone, a meteorite that was venerated by the pagan Arabs centuries before Muhammad Islamized it by wrapping it up with a new and totally concocted historical and theological background that he plagiarized, plundered, pirated, and perverted from the Bible. It would have been inconceivable and utterly illogical for the pagan Arabs not to have a representation of their supreme rock god. It was because the black stone represented the spiritual home of the supreme rock god of the pagan Arabs that Muhammad, who according to the ahadith actually venerated it, had no choice but to keep it, the black stone.
Will you please tell me why you use the expressions Muhammad's Quran instead of just the Quran and Muhammadan Muslims?
Because what has eluded the understanding of most of humanity is that there is not a single letter, let alone a word, a sentence, a paragraph, or a chapter in the whole of the Quran that could have been revealed by any merciful and compassionate divinity. The Quran contains no mercy or compassion towards any human being, not even if they are followers of Muhammad. It is very important that the listeners should know that the greatest enemy, threat, and scourge of Muhammad and Islam is knowledge, and that the best friend, aid, supporter, and savior of Muhammad and Islam is ignorance. Hence, based entirely upon the Islamic sources themselves, in the Quran, in the Ahadith, and in the literature of the Muslim exegetes, I can assert that without a shadow of a doubt, and in reality, every letter, every word, every ayah, paragraph, and surah in the Quran is actually the product of Muhammad's fervent imagination, reflecting his personal thoughts, his fears, his hatreds, his lust, his anger, his jealousy, his needs, and his ideas. The Quran, in short, is Muhammad's own alter ego, projected into the unsuspecting mouth of Allah, the supreme rock god of the Quraysh, embedded in the corner wall of the Kaaba, called the black stone. As far as I know, rocks, whether black, meteorites, or gems, do not and cannot inspire human beings with revelations. That is why I repeatedly mention Muhammad's Quran, since he was its author. And in fact, Muhammad, Gabriel, and Allah are one and the same, Muhammad, with Gabriel and Allah as red herrings to give his words divine sanction. I mention Muhammad and Muslims because they follow the cult of Muhammad. Muhammadan Islam is not a religion, but only a cult. In the Oxford Dictionary, religion is a belief in the divine. Cult is the belief and in emulation of a human being. Both the Quran and the Ahadith assert and instruct, especially the males of Muhammadan Islam to slavishly emulate the deeds, thoughts, manners and ideas of Muhammad, since he represented the perfect male human being. This, by and of itself, represents cultism. Most important of all, there is not a single decent idea in the Quran that has not been plagiarized, pirated, plundered and or perverted from the beliefs of others. The only new items in it are the enormous number of hate-mongering, war-mongering, torture and hellish verses that permeate most of its pages. When Muhammad conquered Mecca in 631 AD, he allegedly entered the Kaaba and destroyed the 360 idols in its precincts, shouting, "Falsehood is destroyed, truth prevails." Muhammad, as was his modus operandi, imitated and acted up parts which belonged to the Hebrew, Israelite and Jewish leaders. In the case above, Muhammad was imitating the greatest exemplar of monotheism, Abraham, who according to Jewish traditions destroyed the idols of his father's household. Sahih al-Bukhari Hadith 4.447 narrated by Aisha. I stuffed for the Prophet a pillow decorated with pictures of animals which looked like a namruqa, i.e. small cushion. He came and stood among the people with excitement apparent on his face. I said, "O Allah's Apostle, what is wrong?" He said, "What is this pillow?" I said, "I have prepared this pillow for you so that you can recline on it." He said, "Don't you know that angels do not enter a house wherein there are pictures? And whoever makes a picture will be punished on the day of resurrection and will be asked to give life to what he has created." Sahih al-Bukhari Hadith 8.130 narrated by Aisha. The Prophet entered upon me while there was a curtain having pictures of animals in the house. His face got red with anger, and then he got hold of the curtain and tore it to pieces. The Prophet said, "Such people as paint these pictures will receive the severest punishment on the day of resurrection." Al-Tirmidhi Hadith 6182 narrated by Aisha. Gabriel brought a picture of her on a piece of green silk to Allah's Messenger and said, "This is your wife in this world and the next." Muhammad forbade any human or animal representations whatsoever in emulation of the Torah prohibitions as mandated in Exodus 20.4. "You shall not make yourself a carved image, nor any likeness which is in the heavens above, or on the earth below, or in the waters beneath the earth." Muhammad, who went into paroxysms of rage and disgust at seeing pictures of humans or animals, but was not the least perturbed when a sexual fantasy picture of his child bride-to-be was shown to him. Sahih al-Bukhari 5.584 narrated by Ibn Abbas. When Allah's Apostle arrived in Mecca, he refused to enter the Kaaba while there were idols in it. So he ordered that they be taken out. The pictures of the prophets Abraham and Ishmael holding arrows of divination in their hands were carried out. The Prophet said, "May Allah ruin them," that is the infidels, for they knew very well that they, i.e. Abraham and Ishmael, never drew lots by these divination arrows. Then the Prophet entered the Kaaba and said, "Allahu Akbar," in all his directions, and came out and did not offer any prayer therein. This is a very interesting and incriminating story, since it does not reflect any reality. It is recorded in all the hadiths that Muhammad visited the Kaaba most of his adult life long before and long after he declared his prophethood. Why then did he not see or remark upon these alleged pictures before? Why is there no mention of these pictures in the Quran? In fact, why did he not refuse to enter the Kaaba during these 22 years of his life? According to Ibn Ishaq, concerning the satanic verses incident, Muhammad prostrated in the Kaaba with his followers and with the polytheists. Nowhere in all the hadiths is there a single occasion when Muhammad refused to either enter or circumambulate the Kaaba. Like most of the traditions after his death, counted in the hundreds of thousands, they were concocted by his followers to fit in with their different sects and agendas and have little veracity in them, as Bukhari, Muslim and others found out during their collections of the ahadith. We have shown once again how it is almost impossible to accept the veracities of either the Quranic verses that contradict the Bible or the hadiths that contradict each other, as well as the very records of Muhammadan Islam.
Millions of people regard the Kaaba as the holiest place in Muhammadan Islam. What in reality is the Kaaba?
In Arabic, it means a cube, stele, Beth-El. The historical records show no evidence whatsoever that it was at any time but a house of idolatry, and was never associated with monotheism until the advent of Muhammad. It was a primitively structured shrine built by the pagan Arabs as a simple cube-like structure, without a roof, which sheltered a 12-inch diameter meteorite in the eastern corner of its wall. According to Ibn Ishaq, page 84, it was made of loose stones above a man's height, and they wanted to raise it and roof it because men had stolen part of the treasure of the Kaaba, which used to be in a well in the middle of it. This stone can be kissed during the preambulation, the circulation of the faithful around the Kaaba. It was one of pagan Arabia's holiest shrines, with 360 idols around it, and an object of pilgrimage. Being a site of pilgrimage, brought to Mecca trade and wealth in the same way that all such sites of pilgrimage do, and as it continues to do so up to this time in Saudi Arabia. It is an astounding fact that in the Quran, the name of Mecca is never mentioned, while in the Bible, the name of Jerusalem is mentioned 667 times. It is also a fact that little is known about the history of the Kaaba, apart from the myths and the totally unsubstantiated Muhammadan traditions, which are full of contradictions, that maintain the following: that the Kaaba was originally built by Adam to a celestial prototype. This story is neither found in the Quran nor in the Bible. That after the deluge, it was allegedly rebuilt by Abraham and Ishmael as a place of worship. Chapter 2, verse 127. And remember, Abraham and Ismail raised the foundations of the house. The Quran, the presumed word of Allah, contradicts all the ahadith stories by denying Adam any involvement whatsoever with the Kaaba, as it asserts that only Abraham and Ishmael were the builders of its foundation as the first house of worship dedicated to the one and only Allah. While engaged in rebuilding, Ishmael received the black stone from the angel Gabriel. This, of course, makes absolutely no sense, since Ishmael would have needed to build the foundations of the Kaaba to protect something special, the black stone, for example, and certainly not if it were empty. Why else did he need to build foundations to a flimsy structure not worthy of any god? The black stone had to be there in the first place as a fetish and object of veneration. Since Abraham and Ishmael were monotheists, and Abraham already, according to the Muhammadan traditions, destroyed the idols of his father, why would he and Ishmael build a shrine for another idol such as a meteorite? If the Arab tradition already knew of Abraham, why then did they lapse into idolatry for at least 25 centuries that followed, while the Israelites and the Jews carried forth the torch of monotheism that inspired Muhammad to create his Quran? How was it possible that not a single pagan Arab was called Ibrahim or Ismail, if they actually were the fathers of the Arabs? In contrast, after Muhammad, his name is carried by an enormous number of his followers. If the traditions are true, why then do repeated Quranic verses insist, in clear terms, that they, the Arabs, were actually totally ignorant of previous revelations, such as in chapters 2:151, 11:49, 12:3, 16:43, etc. It is imperative that we make clear even the obvious, that the alleged Arabian traditions contradict everything written in the Bible regarding Abraham and Ishmael, since according to the Bible, neither Abraham nor Ishmael knew a God called Allah. They never traveled south to Arabia. They never knew any place called Mecca or structure called Kaaba. They never built the foundations of any structure. They never heard of or knew any messenger called Gabriel. Every single item in both the Quran and the Hadiths regarding Abraham and Ishmael are lies and deceptions. Centuries before Muhammad, most of the rituals of Muhammadan Islam were already practiced by the pagan Arabs, such as pilgrimage, circumambulating the Kaaba, calling the names of their idols, kissing the black stone, prostrating, running between the two hills Safa and Marwa, venerating Zamzam, fasting, wearing white clothing, etc., etc., etc. In reality, Muhammad simply incorporated all the pagan rituals, traditions and fetishes of the pagan Arabs and Islamized them to give his cult legitimacy, a sense of identity and an image of uniqueness, so that he made it easier and less stressful for his brother Arabs to move from idolatry and paganism to his brand of monotheism by continuing the practices of their pagan fathers. In short, all Muhammad did was merely to obliterate the pagan representations of the idols without abolishing the pagan practices. Muhammad's quarrel with his Quraysh tribe was not because they did not believe in Allah, which they obviously did, but because they associated other gods and goddesses with him. The same Muhammad who went into paroxysms of rage and disgust that filled the Quran at the idol worshipping of his tribe, the Quraysh, did not hesitate for one moment to incorporate every facet of their traditions and fetishes into his new cult without shame or remorse. During the whole period of 23 years that he used to fulminate and attack his idol-worshipping Quraysh tribe, Muhammad prayed in the Kaaba with them while it was full of pagan gods and goddesses. His hypocrisy knew no bounds. To gain favor with the pagan Arab tribes, he actually joined them wholeheartedly, but for the single and very simple amendment to the whole of their religion. That was to believe in one Allah instead of Allah and 360 other idols. It is extremely relevant to relate the story that Umar ibn al-Khattab reluctantly but very intelligently remarked about the kissing of the black stone. In Bukhari Hadith 2.667, he remarked, "I know that you are only a stone, that neither helps nor hurts. And if the Messenger of Allah had not kissed you, I would not have kissed you." Then he kissed it. It is very revealing that although Umar knew that the gesture was empty and false, he nonetheless copied Muhammad in kissing the stone. Just like Umar, billions of Muhammadans had followed and continue to follow their spiritual leaders in this shameful practice of venerating what was and continues to be a pagan ritual. Hence every Muhammadan who makes the Hajj, who runs between the hills, who kisses the black stone, etc., is performing pagan rituals founded on pagan superstitions and sanctions by Muhammad himself. What is important to point out is that most of the same Muhammadans who incessantly assail and assault the paganism of the Christians do not even know that the entirety of their traditions and fetishes are based upon the paganism of the ancestors of the Arabs. It is always a pity and with great frustration that we cannot mention all the verses in the Quran and Hadith regarding any of the subjects that we are exploring with you for lack of time. It is up to you, the listeners, who are inquisitive and want to know more, to read the relevant books or visit the definition section in our website.